Welcome into the Original Gangsters podcast. I'm your host, Scott Burnstein. We're going to do an exclusive Jimmy Hoffa episode right now. Our guest is I'm going to call you controversial, Mike. Mike Yarbrough is a alleged firsthand witness to the Hoffa assassination murder back in the summer of 1975. I met Mike about 10 years ago. I wrote a story on his alleged first person account. He has gone on to be on the History Channel and Fox News talking about his account. We'll let him come on and tell it. For full transparency I hope Mike doesn't have a problem with me saying this. Our relationship has been contentious, and we're going to hash it out in front of the audience. So, Mike, welcome on. I want to first say I think Mike is sincere. I do not think Mike is a con man, but I disagree, and I'm at odds with some of Mike's story. Although at the end, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mike. At the end of the day, I just want to open by saying Mike and I we might have our differences in opinion, and we're going to talk about it here. But at the end of the day, we both want the same thing. Mike wants the authorities to dig up or do a very comprehensive ground penetrating radar on the Renaissance Center. For people that aren't from Detroit, the Renaissance Center is the signature building of our skyline. And it was a construction site when Jimmy Hoffa disappeared. And there has been people besides Mike that have gone to authorities and said that Hoffa's body is in the foundation of the Renaissance Center. I have always, even if I don't agree with, again, everything Mike says, I have always been a huge proponent of digging there. I don't know why they haven't yet. Mike wants to push the ball forward down the field in terms of getting an official search there. I'm in 100% behind that. And then there's just other things that we don't see eye to eye on. Mike, welcome. And just jump in and tell people your story and what you saw on July 30th, 1975.
Well, Scott, July 1975, 30th. Actually, I graduated that year out of Benton Harbor High School, June the 5th of 1975. I was 17.
In Benton Harbor?
I'm from Benton Harbor, Michigan.
Okay, so for people that I want to explain for people that aren't from this area, Benton Harbor is on the far west side of Michigan. It's closer to Chicago than it is Detroit, but a lot of people from Benton Harbor end up in the Metro Detroit area. So I'm guessing, Michael, you came to Metro Detroit from the west side of the state.
Yeah, I just had a son that year, my oldest son. He was born on July the 15th, 1975. So one of my sisters told me that the one that was at Ferris State College told me, she said, why don't you weigh the odds versus going to college right now or take care of your son, your responsibilities. They're hiring up here in Detroit, Michigan. They worked at General Motors in Hamtramck. And she said they're hiring in the factory and they're building this new building downtown called the Renaissance Center there. It needed help. They wanted to fill these job positions in the building and open the building up for, and have a ribbon cutting for 1976. And they was going to have a bicentennial ribbon cutting, the spirit of 1776 and 1976. So back then, Mayor Coleman Young was the mayor, and he invited all the people on the news, Channel 4 and Channel 2 and Channel 7, to come down and apply for positions for the job so they could have those job positions filled when they get ready to have the grand opening. So I came up here in my 1970 Firebird Pontiac, green Firebird Pontiac. I went to Inkster, Michigan, where my oldest brother and his wife lived, and my sister was visiting up there. at the time. She hadn't graduated yet from Ferris. So I came up and visited my brother, my oldest brother, Bob, and I saw it on the news. So I went downtown. It was like 15, 20 minutes to Detroit from Inkster. I went downtown to the Renaissance Center, parked in the parking structure that was already complete on the Atwater side by the Canadian Tunnel. I pulled in. Back then, you could pull in and it's easy accessible. You can just get out your car, walk through the door. Shopping, you can shop, go to the theater, all that. They had a waterfall and all that stuff, man. It was nice. But getting back to me coming,
it was a giant. Just for people that aren't from the area, it was a giant tourist attraction when it first was built. There was a lot of media coverage and fanfare. It's gone on now almost 50 years later. Like I said, it's the signature of the skyline. When you see the skyline in Detroit, the first thing you notice is the Renaissance Center. And back then it was a real beehive of activity, people coming from all around the country to see it. So, and the last thing I'll say, and I'll turn it back over to Mike, he talked about Coleman Young, the mayor, who the first black mayor of a major American city and had been elected in 1973, I believe. And he had lunch with Jimmy Hoffa the day before Hoffa disappeared. He was meeting with Coleman Young to talk about Teamster pension fund loans. Go ahead.
Yeah, quid pro quo.
Yeah, well, that's what it was.
Yeah, the Book Cadillac Hotel.
Yeah, exactly. It had to do with the refurbishing the Book Cadillac.
Yeah, and at the same time, they had a meeting at Carl's Chop House. A lot of those mob figures, along with Thomas Andretta, one of the people that killed him.
Well, I'll say that there's been people that have said that. I'm not saying I disagree with it, but I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with it. But we can get to that in a second. What Mike is referencing is that there was an allegation from an FBI informant named Don Wells, who said he's dead now, that he was at Carl's Chop House, which was a big steakhouse down in Detroit that was a Giacalone brothers' favorite haunt, a place that they hung out a lot at, and that according to Don Wells, when he showed up on July 29th, 1975, Tony Provenzano was there, the Andretta brothers were there, and they talked about how it was going to be, quote unquote, a great day the following day. Sorry, right. I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Yeah, me and Wells, matter of fact, Wells is from my area as well. And I called Wells several times to discuss that before he passed away. And we were on the same page with that particular situation as well. But anyway, these guys had flew in from Pontiac from New Jersey, and they flew in at the airport at Pontiac. The two Virgulio brothers, Sal Virgulio.
Again, Mike, I'm not trying to. I'm not saying it's not true, but I don't want to be putting that out as fact. That's what people have said, including Frank Sheeran, who they made the movie The Irishman about, including Don Wells. They have alleged that these guys came in, the Provenzano crew, the two Virgulio brothers, the Andretta brothers, into a Pontiac airport. But I still don't know if that's actually true, but that's part of the common narrative.
You know why I think it's true? I mean, I know it's out there on on YouTube. The reason why I know it's true is because when I get through telling my story about what happened at the Renaissance Center to me, this one particular person that was on that flight, I identified him at the Renaissance Center when Hoffa was being killed. So that's a fact. You know, Wells was right on that part. Picardo, the liar, was right about that part. Stephen Andretta, I don't know why he went to the prison and told all of this, but actually what he did is he told the truth to Picardo, all but the part with the barrel going in a truck going to New Jersey and in a dump. That was not true.
Well, again, I just want to make sure we're throwing out a lot of names and just want people to know. What Mike's referring to is little Ralphie Picardo, who was Tony Provenzano's driver, who was locked up when this all happened. the Andretta brothers, according to multiple people, went to go visit little Ralphie behind bars after Hoffa had disappeared, and had discussed, according to Picardo and others, had discussed parts of the crime. And that's how some of this that Mike's talking about, that I'm saying I'm not sure if I believe or not, that's how that all started to come out. It came from Picardo, who, unbeknownst to the Andretta brothers, was a cooperative.
It's funny. It came from the murderers themselves. You know, I don't know what possessed him to go to that prison and talk to Picardo, but actually, maybe it was just a deterrent to deter everything away from the actual crime scene here in Detroit. But like you say, it's not really, you say it's an East Coast bias thing, but it's really a collaborated murder plot between the East Coast and the Midwest Coast.
Well, let's just get to what you saw, and then we can kind of back up from that and talk more macro, more macro. But you give us your micro.
Right, we'll stick to the story here of what I saw.
Yeah.
On July the 30th, 1975. Like I said, I was coming up here, and I decided I'd come up here and try to find a job. So I heard they were hiring down at the Renaissance Center. They had just completed phase 1 of the construction of the building. So they invited all the public in to look at everything, how nice it was looking and everything, and fill out these job applications. So I went into the building. I went up on the ground floor, and I saw this security guard desk there, which I was coming down there to apply for a security guard job anyway. And he said, I said, so where's Clean America? Clean America was a temporary employment agency that hires people. So they had just completed phase 1, and they had entered into phase 2 of the construction project. Phase 1 was complete Tower 100, Tower 200, 400, and partially the center tower, which is now it used to be the Westin Hotel. Now it's the Marriott.
The Marriott. It was the Westin, I think, when it opened.
Yes, and it was known as the tallest hotel. I don't know if it still is now in America. But anyway, as I entered into the building, I saw the security guard at the desk, and I said, "Where's Clean America?" He said, "Well, go down the escalator to the ground floor and make a right." So I went down the escalator to the ground floor, but some reason I made a left, and I don't know what told me to make a left, but it took me to Tower 200, which was already complete. But it was empty. Nothing was in there. It was complete, though. So I kept on going around. It's like a circular motion in the building. You can get lost in there very easily. And it took me to, which is now Tower 300 now. But when I got there, it was this plastic all the way up to the ceiling with yellow cords and white lights. And it's the kind of plastic you can't see through it, but you can hear through it. So as I stood there, I couldn't go any further. So I stood there and I heard somebody screaming for help, then real loud. So, as I looked to my right, it was like this little yellow ramp go up, like construction ramp go up. And in the back of this ramp, it was like authorized personnel only. Nobody can enter unless you had hard hat, safety glasses, and steel-toe shoes. So I said, well, I'm 18 years old at the time. I'm like, wow, I'm hearing this man scream. I said, well, maybe I can go in there and help him. I'm thinking somebody had got hurt, a construction worker had gotten hurt, and I could go in there and help him. So I saw this door as I went up that ramp to my left. I opened the door, and it had a cement ramp, a man-made ramp that went all the way down like 15, 20 feet down. It was the basement, it was like the basement underneath the ground floor. And when I got down there, it was dust everywhere. It was this 8-foot wooden fence around these 2 giant pillars that they were constructing. Both pillars were already cured. They had like maybe 8 to 10 feet, 4 feet pillars that were already cured. But on the 4th level of that pillar, it was empty. So as I was looking up, the man still hollering and screaming. Uh, there was this guy over next to them, a construction worker. He was hammering on the cement real hard, trying to drown the guy out that was screaming. So I looked up there and I seen these two men holding this one guy in the middle, which I found out was Jimmy Hoffa the next day on the news. They was holding him by both arms. They had black suits on, black tie, white shirt, and these John Belushi style glasses and black shoes. They were taller than the man in the middle, and they were younger guys. I would say in their late 30s, maybe early 40s. And as I looked behind them, there was this burgundy 1975 Mercury Marquise sitting there running with his lights on, and the trunk was up. And there was the door was open on the driver's side. And I noticed this fat, chubby guy that was sitting behind the wheel. He had sideburns and a wide collar, the wide collars that we used to wear back then in the 70s, very popular. And behind them to their right was this cement truck, which was backed up. And the gurney was coming out the front of the cement truck all the way down to the hole where that pillar was being constructed at, beside those three men that were standing there. And the ball was turning real slow on it at first. And then all of a sudden, they pushed the man in the hole, and the cement, the ball started turning real fast, and the cement started gushing down on top of him until they buried him alive. So at that moment, while I was standing there, this tall guy, another mob figure, he had the same black suit on, black tie, white shirt, John Belushi shades on, and black shoes. He walks up to me and he said, "You better keep moving or you're going to be next." So I threw my hands up in the air and said, "Man, you ain't got to worry about me, man. I'm out of here." So as I walked away from him, well, he at that moment, he took his shades off, his John Belushi shades off, and looked me directly in my eyes, and I could see that he had done killed several people. And he opened his coat up and showed me his gun, and he said, "You better keep moving or you're going to be next." So I walked away maybe about 15 feet, and some told me that somebody he was following me. So I looked around, and he was coming at me full force, man. So he couldn't catch me because I had just got out of high school. I was running track, cross country. He couldn't catch me. So I ran to Tower 400, and I saw this men and women's restroom, and I ran into the restroom, and I got on top of this toilet stall. And inside this stall, they had like 12 stalls back then. Now they only got like 4. As I got into the first stall, I was shaking like Don Knotts, peeing on myself, man. I was so scared. I looked down underneath the it's a little area there maybe about 3 or 4 inches. You could see when people coming into the bathroom door. He stood there for a minute. I saw his black shoes stand there for about 3 seconds. Then he just turned around and walked away. I was like, wow. I mean, he could have just kicked the door in and shot me, but I found out as I've been talking about this case, I talked to Michael Francis, and he told me that he wouldn't have killed me either way it went, because they have to have orders from the boss, otherwise they'll kill them. And at the time, Michael Francis said the person that called that hit out was a guy by the name of Fat Tony Salerno. But that's neither here nor there. He didn't kill me.
So, by the way, I agree. That's something that we can agree on. I think that Salerno, who was one of the bosses of the Genovese crime family, was one of the people that put this whole thing into motion. I agree with that.
Yes, and everybody keeps asking me, well, why he didn't kill you? I mean, that's the reason why the man.
I'll agree with Michael Francis on that, and I'll tell people that follow Mike Francis and that have gone and seen him at his events and his talks. He, without mentioning Mike's actual name, Mike Yarbrough, he references Mike as somebody that he has spoken to, and he tells part of Mike's story. And Mike Francis has been somebody that has been championing Mike Yarbrough's story. Go ahead, Mike.
Right, and to piggyback on that, Scott, Mike has some information that he turned over to law enforcement when he was here last year.
Yeah.
Kind of fit with what my story is, it coincides with my story. Yes, Hoffa is buried in a wet place down by the Detroit River, and he was buried in a lot of wet concrete cement.
That's what Francis told, just to let people know, that's what Francis told the feds, that he had heard from somebody in the New York Mafia that was locked up, that he allegedly has tapes of, and that jives with Mike's firsthand account.
Right, and he was so right. That's why I reached out to Michael Francis, because I said, Mike, I heard him talking about the guys in a wet place, and I said, you know what? Concrete cement is wet. A whole lot of wet. It takes a lot of water to make cement.
Well, and the Renaissance Center is located on the banks of the Detroit River, so
yeah, and that's a wet place. I mean, it's right there on the river.
Right.
Because Hoffa is buried in the cornerstone of the building in Tower 300. He's under about 8 feet of concrete cement, and it's going to be very easy to detect the void in the pillar once we go in there.
Mike, let's take the audience through your timeline. When was the first time you told anyone about this?
Well, Scott, when it first happened, I told my family about it in 1975, July the 30th, the same day it happened. I told my family, and they said, Mike, if I were you, I'd leave that alone, man. That's the mob, man. They'll kill you and our whole family. Right. So I left it alone for about 27 years, and then that was around the time when I came to the FBI for the first time, November of 2002.
Okay.
I told them about it. And, I had the story all wrong at first because I had tried to brainwash myself to wash it out of my mind, man, because I didn't want them to kill me,
Well, so just for again, so Mike, so one of the things that Mike and I butted heads on, and I'm guessing this is what he's talking about when he's talking about the FBI, is that when Mike first came to me, his timeline was, in terms of his timeline of the day, was was off in terms of what we know. Mike initially said that this happened in the morning, and we know it happened in the afternoon. Mike is, you're saying that you just misremembered it and was trying to block it out. Whatever, but that was your first foot forward in telling people this, and it just kind of it cuts against you in that regard, because you kind of changed your timelines.
Right. But when I finally figured it, when I finally gathered all my thought processes, you got to look at it. It was like almost 30 years had passed by. But when I finally gathered my thought process into my subconscious mind, I put it to my conscious mind. It started coming together. And then as I read some of your books, like in 2017, I went to the library and I saw a book that you had wrote in the gangster book.
The Detroit True Crime Chronicles.
Yeah, and I saw this picture of Thomas Andretta in the book. And that's when I first identified who Thomas was, the guy that chased me and tried to kill me in the Renaissance Center. I didn't know him from a can of paint.
So they didn't, when you went to the FBI in 2002, they didn't show you any photo lineups or?
They didn't show me anything. And I've talked to over 8 agents. I sit down, I drew pictures, I showed them the exact location. They didn't show me pictures of nothing. Matter of fact, they threatened me and told me if I ever come down there again, they was going to lock me up.
And this was in the
times I came down there,
That was this was in the 2000s.
Yeah, this was in the 2000s. This has been as recently as 2013.
What about state police and Oakland County police or Oakland County law enforcement? Because those offices also have jurisdiction.
Right. So in 2018, I went down. I talked to the Michigan State Police because I'm a retired corrections officer myself, in law enforcement and criminal justice. I talked to one of the homicide detectives down at the Michigan State Police, and he met me down at the Renaissance Center, and we did a complete walkthrough of what happened. It's the whole scenario of what I just told you, and we had GPS and camera, and that was back in 2018, December the 4th of 2018, and We did the walkthrough. We finished. 6 months later, somebody unauthorized at the Detroit FBI called the Michigan State Police and told them to cease and desist because it wasn't their jurisdiction. So I talked to the Hoffa Task Force agent that's in charge right now, and he told me that it wasn't him that did that. Whoever made that phone call was unauthorized to do that. And he said the Michigan State Police.
You talked to Mark. You talked to Mark, who's the guy who's in charge of it now, right?
Correct. And he told me that whoever made that phone call was unauthorized to do that. So this made me think that somebody's trying to cover this crime scene up. Why would they do that? Is somebody down there working to close to not discover this man in this building? I mean, after all, there's human remains in this building, whether they believe it or not. That is, if it's Hoffa or not. There's a man in that building, and they really need to get in there and get this man out. So, since the FBI has had my case for going on 23 years now, Scott, they have done absolutely nothing but blew dust off of my file. So, I took it upon myself to find me 2 private investigators as we speak, which has law enforcement backing. I found a ground penetration crew that's willing to go in the building. Very willing, but they're saying I got to pay $1,000. I probably had that tomorrow, but we are going to go in the building. And we are going to. I got permission from General Motors headquarters, global security management. He gave me the green light, and my investigators the green light to go in there, so we don't have to get a search warrant. It's private property. We don't have to get a search warrant. We don't have to go to court and do all of that. We don't have to have permission from the FBI.
No, as long as the property owner lets you go in there, you can do whatever you want, as long as they're okay with it. So right, you need $1,000. We were talking about this off camera, and I was thinking about this. If you, for whatever reason, if what you think the money's coming in soon, it doesn't come in, why don't you think about crowdfunding?
Oh, I'm not really worried about that because my private eyes are going to take care of some of the expenses as well. So we're good on that. I probably have all of it tomorrow, and if I don't, we got ways of getting it. You know what I mean? It's only $1,000. It ain't like.
What I'm saying is, I'm sure there's somebody that's probably watching this right now or listening to this that is probably of means, and $1,000 is probably not that much money to them. And if they can get to the bottom of the, America's most notorious unsolved mystery, I'm guessing that they might offer it up. So I wanted to put that out there.
Hey, Scott, I'm 100% sure that this guy is there. Okay.
I believe that Mike believes this. I don't know if it's actually true, but I do believe that you believe this. And I do believe that there is a reason right now to search there. I am 100% behind Mike in the, and I've been saying, I know, Mike, you don't know, you haven't consumed everything but even though I haven't been platforming you in these last couple of years, and you wanted me to, and now we're doing it. But I want you to understand, you might not have been hearing or listening, but anytime anybody's ever asked me, even though I have gone on the record to say that I don't think there is a body, but if there is a body, I do believe this is the best theory, and I do believe whether or not my belief, regardless of my belief, I've always said I wanted the authorities to go and give that the due diligence it deserves. In that regard, we're on the same page.
Right, and you have to consider David Tubman's mother and father identified Chucky O'Brien as the driver. David Tubman's father knew Chucky and a lot of the mobsters that used to frequent Darby's back in the 60s.
And I think the more, I'm going to be making your case for you. I think the more credible backing of your theory comes from an actual mob figure, Marvin Elkin, who was a Canadian racketeer, FBI informer. And he was somebody that had a very close relationship with Jimmy Hoffa and was somebody that was close to or relatively close to the Giacalone brothers, who are the top suspects in this. And Elkin told the FBI what Mike has told the FBI, that the Giacalones told, that Hoffa's in the Renaissance Center, that
Right.
Giacalone's told Marvin Elkin that that's where he is. I've heard stories over the years, and you judge for yourself. I've heard multiple people besides Marvin, besides Mike, that have said that the Giacalones were kind of, I guess, famous for whenever they were in the Renaissance Center or around the Renaissance Center and they were with people, they liked to joke with them. Hey, everybody, say hi to Jimmy, say good morning to Jimmy. And it was more than just Marvin who heard that.
Right.
I've always put that in my book. I've always put that into the Giacalone's disinformation campaign, trying to get people off the scent. But I can't deny that that's what they've said. They have said that. They said that multiple times, and that's why. Yeah. So
and get this, Scott. I was on Facebook. A person that I had friended contacted me, and he was the driver for John Dingell, Congressman John Dingell, which has been the oldest congressman in the White House or Congress. And he was with Richard Nixon's administration as well. And the guy called me. His name is, I don't know if he wants me to mention his name out here, but the FBI knows about it. He gave me permission to give the FBI his name and information. But he told me, he said, Mike, I used to be the driver for Congressman John Dingell. And John told me in 1980 that Hoffa's buried in the Renaissance Center. I was like, what? I'm sure Congressman Dingell knows because, Nixon was all tied up in that pension fund, Watergate scandal and all that. And if anybody would know, it would be the oldest sitting congressman in the United States. I mean, come on. So the FBI knows about that information and that person. They know about Marvin Elkin on what he said and heard. He saw that mad rush. He saw to pour cement that day. Marvin was in the building that day when they had that mad rush, and so was I. That was the day that Hoffa got buried in the Renaissance Center. It was a mad rush to pour cement. And people was running like chickens with no head. But in the particular area where they buried Hoffa at, it's funny that it wasn't hardly nobody there. It was strange. I don't know if, come to find out, I think they told the people who were working there don't come in that day. I'm hearing bits and pieces of that because when they came in the next day, they saw the mud crackings and everything of where trucks had came in and out of there the next day after they buried Hoffa. I went down there, matter of fact, on the 31st of July. I was getting ready to go back home to Benton Harbor, but something told me to go back downtown because I couldn't believe what I had just saw the day before. I'm like, I got to go back down here and see this, even though I was scared about this Mafia thing. I wasn't that scared. I mean, if they get me, they get me. But, I had to go back down there and see, was this true? So when I went back down there, Scott, I went right back to the area where they buried him at, and it was all smooth off, real in a circle, smooth off on top of him in that first pillar. The second pillar that was over there, adjacent in between where the man was hammering on the cement, the hole was still empty, the 8 to 10 foot tier. It has 4 tiers on each pillar, and the 4th tier on the top was still empty. I was like, oh, was they intending on putting me in that hole? Shoot. It really was an eerie feeling. So I just hurried up and got back in my car and I went on back to Benton Harbor. And as the years went by, I kept visiting Detroit just to make sure I didn't forget the exact location as to where he was at. But as I went down to the FBI in 2002, I told them Tower 400 because, it's a big city. The building, you get confused. It's in a circular motion. You don't know the southwest corner, the southeast corner, the northwest corner. You don't know which corner you're in unless you actually digest the building properly. So it took me many, many years to try to figure out how this building is built. But one thing kept coming to my mind. It was phase 2, and it was the southeast corner of the building, which is now Tower 300, because it was building Tower 300 and Tower 5 and 600 in phase 2, the year they invited the public into the building. All the rest of the building was already complete, Tower 200, 100, 400, and partially the center tower of the hotel was already built. So I kept visiting the building, and throughout the years, they kept trying to changed things around. They done changed the bathroom around. They done changed a lot of things around in the building, but still, you can never forget the cornerstone of the building. Every building has a cornerstone. Remember that. The church has a
Mike,
cornerstone.
we only got like 2 minutes, so I want to be sure to
Oh,
get.
okay. Okay.
Have you taken what's your polygraph background? Have you taken a polygraph for the feds or for the state police?
Yes, I have. I took a state police polygraph in 2018 in Pontiac. Steve Garagiola from Channel 4 News came and swooped me up here at the house. And we went up there, I took the polygraph, and it was inconclusive. They couldn't tell whether I was telling the truth or lying, but
So
that
here,
just goes to show polygraph is not accurate because I'm telling the truth.
so I want to thank Mike Yarbrough for coming on and sharing his story. As we were wrapping up there, Mike wanted to tell everyone about David Tubman's book. David Tubman is a former Detroiter that wrote a book based on his parents' firsthand knowledge, belief of what they saw on the day of July 30th, 1975, the afternoon that Hoffa disappeared. David Tubman's dad was a former host at Darby's, which was a famous, popular restaurant in Northwest Detroit that Chucky O'Brien used to go into a lot. And David Tubman's dad claims that he saw Chucky O'Brien driving the Mercury Marquis at about 3:30 going south on Telegraph. I know David Tubman. I have a lot of respect for him. And again, just like with Mike, I agree with some of their theories and don't agree with other parts of it. I have a big issue with Chucky O'Brien being involved in the major aspects of this conspiracy. My reporting and my research has told me, and I believe this jives with the FBI's research or FBI's investigation, that Chucky's only job that day was to take possession of the car, the hit team's car at about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and he had to run an errand and then return the car at about 2:30. So he took the car from Tony Giacaloni's son, Joey, at about 9:30, 10. He went and ran an errand in the west suburbs, far west suburbs, and then came closer to the east-west side dividing line where Tony Giacaloni's headquarters, the South Athletic Club, was. And I believe that Chucky dropped the car off at South Athletic Club at about 2 o'clock and then never had possession of the car after that. But because he had possession of the car that morning and a lot of people saw him in that car, the common belief was that he was the driver in the hit. Now, for people that really know, and I'm not trying to disrespect Mike Yarbrough or David Tubman, but for people that really understand the dynamics at play between Chucky O'Brien and Jimmy Hoffa and the Mafia, first of all, the mob would never trust Chucky O'Brien to do something like this in terms of picking Hoffa up to be taken to a slaughter. And if they had used him, he'd be dead. They would have killed him before he died of natural causes a couple years ago. And really the most, insightful anecdotal evidence that tells you that he wouldn't have been involved in the kidnapping is that even though that they were, Hoffa was Chucky's surrogate father, kind of adopted Chucky as a young boy. For the last year of Hoffa's life, him and Chucky O'Brien were not speaking. They had a huge fallout in the fall of 1974. And Chucky O'Brien throughout all 1975 was going around not just Detroit, but the whole country and telling everyone that Jimmy Hoffa was a confidential informant for the FBI. So the idea that Hoffa would jump into a car with Chucky is just not believable. And everything they wanted to do was to calm Jimmy Hoffa's nerves and make him as comfortable as possible. If Chucky O'Brien was at the driver's seat to pick Hoffa up, Hoffa would have, blown his top. And I don't see it. And furthermore, the FBI and I believe that Tony Palazzolo was actually driving that car And if you look at pictures of Chucky O'Brien and Tony Palazzolo in 1975, they could have been twins. So I believe anybody that was seen or thought they saw Chucky O'Brien at the wheel of that car after 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon was actually seeing Tony Palazzolo. But again, nothing but respect for these guys. Everybody's focused on trying to get to the end of this mystery and find some closure. Not everybody agrees on, the best route or the best, order of operation, but everybody from, the godfather of Hoffa research, Dan Moldea, down to a guy like Mike Yarbrough, everybody, even though not a lot of people agree with some of the granulars, everybody knows that the final goal here is to find Hoffa or declare that there's nothing to find and put this thing to bed. So we wish Mike Yarbrough nothing but luck, and we want him to get into the Renaissance Center with his team and find, get some GPR and finally be able to say yay or nay with this theory. Thank you so much for checking in with another long form interview here at OG Pod. We took about a month off, and now we're going to be rolling a lot of long form interviews out between now and the end of the year. Stacking them up and rolling them out. Scott Burnstein, please like, subscribe, share OG Pod, spread the word. Scott Burnstein, I'm out.